The Peace Summit's opening ceremony filled Covenant Station's Grand Hall with representatives from two species who'd spent 5 years trying to exterminate each other. Private Nathan Cross stood in the honor guard formation, his dress uniform crisp, his nerves barely concealed. He'd been assigned this detail because someone needed to fill the slot, not because anyone expected anything to happen. Queen Velsara entered like a storm given elegant form, her entourage flowing behind her in perfect synchronization. She was younger than Nathan expected, maybe 30 by human standards, though alien ages were tricky to judge. Her armor was ceremonial but no less impressive, each piece etched with victories and lineage. Her long ears swept back in what Nathan's brief cultural training suggested was focused assessment. The human and Genva delegations exchanged formal greetings, diplomatic language so careful it meant almost nothing. Nathan kept his attention forward, trying not to stare at the Queen even though everyone else was. Then her crystalline gaze swept across the human contingent and stopped. On him. Velsara rose from her seat, and the hall fell into immediate silence. She extended one hand, pointing directly at Nathan with unmistakable certainty. "That human," she declared, her voice carrying across the vast chamber, "will be mine." Nathan's brain stuttered. The words hit like a physical impact, impossible to process. Around him, human diplomats exploded into frantic whispered conferences. The Genva delegation showed no surprise. This had been planned, he realized with dawning horror. Only he hadn't known. "Your Majesty," Ambassador Torres began carefully, "perhaps we should discuss." "There is nothing to discuss." Velsara's tone allowed no argument. Her eyes never left Nathan, pinning him in place like a specimen. "I have chosen. The claiming is declared." Nathan stood frozen while his entire future rearranged itself around a queen's casual pronouncement, wondering what exactly he'd just been claimed for. The private meeting room felt too small despite its size, packed with advisors, diplomats, and enough nervous energy to power the station. Nathan sat across from Queen Velsara while translators explained the concept of claiming in terms he could barely process. "A consort position," Ambassador Torres said, his carefully neutral tone not quite hiding his panic. "Ceremonial, largely symbolic. Public appearances, diplomatic functions. It would unite our species in the eyes of both peoples." "And I have a choice?" Nathan asked, though he already knew the answer. Tor's pause said everything. "Technically, yes, but refusing would be diplomatically catastrophic." Velsara watched this exchange with obvious amusement, her long ears angled forward to catch every nuance. When she finally spoke, it was directly to Nathan, bypassing the translators and diplomats entirely. "You fear I will use you cruelly, that this is punishment disguised as honor. Honestly, I don't know what this is, Your Majesty." Her smile was sharp. "Honesty, good, I chose well." She stood, her presence commanding immediate attention. "You will be my consort, Nathan Cross. You will stand beside me as our peoples forge peace. And in return, I will ensure no harm comes to you. This is not negotiation. This is inevitability." The bonding ceremony happened 3 days later, full of Genva ritual Nathan barely understood. He knelt before her throne while she spoke words that sounded like poetry wrapped around threat. When her hand touched his head, possession and protection in one gesture, Nathan felt the weight of two species' futures settle onto his shoulders. But afterward, alone in the quarters adjacent to hers, Velsara dismissed her attendants and spoke differently. "Tell me about your family," she said, and her tone held genuine curiosity. "Tell me why someone so young chose to fight." Nathan found himself answering honestly, and somewhere in that conversation, he began to suspect the Queen's claiming was more complicated than anyone realized. 3 weeks as Queen Velsara's consort taught Nathan that performance and reality rarely aligned. In public, he stood silent beside her throne, a living symbol of human Genva unity. In private, she asked his opinions on treaty provisions, listened when he pointed out potential human objections, adjusted her strategies based on his insights. "You're using me," he said one evening in her private garden, where bioluminescent plants cast everything in soft blue light. "Of course." Velsara didn't sound offended. "But not how you think. I don't need a puppet, Nathan. I need someone who can help me understand your people well enough to build lasting peace." "Why me specifically? You could have chosen any human." Her long ears angled downward, and for the first time Nathan saw something like vulnerability cross her features. "During the war, I read intelligence reports about human soldiers. Most were what I expected, violent, afraid, desperate, but yours." She pulled up a hollow display showing his military file. "You risked your life to save wounded Genva warriors, showed mercy when none was expected. I needed someone brave enough to stand before me without hatred." Nathan stared at the file at incidents he'd half forgotten. That was just the right thing to do. "Exactly," her crystalline eyes met his. "I didn't choose you for politics, Nathan Cross. I chose you because I needed to know if humans were capable of seeing past the crown, past the war, to the person underneath. And you are." The admission shifted something between them. Nathan realized that he'd stopped being afraid of her weeks ago, that somewhere in the diplomatic functions and private conversations, fear had transformed into something else entirely. Something dangerous and impossible and absolutely real. "What happens when the peace is secured?" he asked quietly. Velsara's smile was sad. "I don't know. Ask me when we get there." The plasma charge tracked toward Queen Velsara during the joint celebration, and Nathan's combat training overrode every diplomatic protocol. He threw himself in front of her, taking the hit meant to kill. The weapon was set to stun, extremists from both species wanting to incapacitate before finishing the job, but Nathan's human physiology reacted badly. His nervous system seized, and consciousness fled. He woke 2 days later in the medical bay to find Velsara at his bedside, her regal composure completely shattered. She'd been there since he collapsed, refusing to leave even for critical state functions. Her hand gripped his with desperate intensity, and when she realized he was conscious, something broke in her carefully maintained control. "You fool," she whispered, her voice cracking. "You beautiful, reckless fool. I claimed you to unite our peoples, to build peace, to serve political necessity. But you—" Tears tracked down her face, crystalline and alien and absolutely genuine. "You were never supposed to matter this much." Nathan's throat was raw, but he managed words. "When did I start mattering?" "The moment you stood before me without fear. No, before that. When I read your file and thought, this one is different. I told myself it was political calculation. I lied." Her long ears pressed flat against her skull. "I am a queen. I don't fall in love with my political tools." "And yet," Nathan prompted. Her crystalline eyes met his, defenses finally lowered completely. "And yet I did. Somewhere between claiming you and watching you nearly die for me, I fell so completely that I can't remember what it felt like before." Nathan pulled her hand to his chest, over his heart. "I stopped seeing you as the enemy weeks ago, stopped seeing the crown and started seeing Velsara, and I fell too." The kiss tasted like relief and promise. Two people from different worlds finally admitting what had been building since the moment she'd pointed across that hall and declared him hers. The recovery took weeks. The conspiracy investigation longer. Extremists from both species arrested, executed, or imprisoned depending on jurisdiction. But when Nathan finally stood beside Velsara at the treaty ratification, everything had changed. She addressed both peoples directly, her voice carrying through translation systems to reach billions. "I claimed Nathan Cross to unite our peoples," she declared. "But I keep him because I love him, not as possession but as partner. Not as symbol but as the man brave enough to save his enemy and wise enough to save his queen." She turned to him, and her smile was purely for Nathan, not the crowd's. "He is mine, and I am his. Let that be the foundation of our peace. that even enemies can choose to become something else. Later in the garden where bioluminescent plants painted everything blue, Velsara removed her crown and set it aside. Still afraid of me? She asked. Nathan pulled her close, marveling at how natural it felt. Terrified, you're a queen who could destroy me with a word. And yet I'd let myself be claimed all over again. He kissed her, and she melted against him. Regal authority and vulnerable heart somehow coexisting in one impossible, perfect woman. She declared him hers that first day.